I think humans are these animals with these really big brains, and it makes existence really complicated for us, and we can't help but search for meaning.
I'm very excited today to be speaking with Pete Ohs, the director of ERUPCJA. ERUPCJA. Pete, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to talk with you. Great poster behind you, Back to the Future.
Thank
One
you.
I would say is my favorite movie, and it's number two is of course second.
I love this one because it plays with the rules they've set, but I think the
Hmm.
first one is the best one.
Yeah,
Um, Although it does bother me that the future is now 11 years in the past. That is frustrating
I know. It
to
was
me
really
as a
fun looking
human.
forward to 2015 though. Like in my childhood, I was so excited to get to 2015 eventually, and
I wanted my hoverboard. That's what
I
I
wanted
wanted
my
more than
hoverboard, I
anything
wanted
else.
my flying cars. Yeah,
Instead, we got Instagram, but that's okay.
I
No,
know.
honestly, Pete, this I really, really thought Erupsia was something special. Where did it come from?
Um, it came from uh, a big part of it of where it came from is this process that I have sort of developed and been doing for the last five movies I've made. Um, which it's very collaborative. It's really just all about making something the way I made things when I was a kid, when I was 15, when it was fun. I'm sort of just chasing that feeling. And that's just and so it's about seeking inspiration, following intuition, and also sort of like simplifying things. For this film and for all these films, they always start with a location, and this film's location was Warsaw. So this is a place that I had moved. I had moved there for romantic reasons, actually, and was living in Poland at the time. And I was there. I was falling in love in Warsaw. I was falling in love with Warsaw, and I wanted to make a movie there. And so that just was the initial kernel of just let's make something in Warsaw. And then what I do is I look around at who are my potential collaborators that are sort of in my orbit. I don't do auditions. I'm just like these are the people that are around that intuitively feel interesting and that I feel excited to make something with. And then and then and then the last like little kernel is I always bring some sort of narrative seed to these collaborators. And with this one, I had been in a conversation where I let somebody know I was living in Warsaw, and he said that he was once stuck in Warsaw for a month because that volcano in Iceland had erupted back in 2010. And when I heard that, I thought that was very exciting and interesting as with like narrative potential. Simultaneously, I had been living in Iceland in 2010, so it also felt connected. There was some sort of serendipitous connection to me that made it feel like this is the correct idea to use for this movie. And then I brought those little kernels, the idea that it's going to be in Warsaw, somebody's going to speak Polish, somebody's not going to speak Polish, and somehow volcanoes were going to be involved to these close collaborators, these friends, and together we talked about what the movie could be. We talked about what things were going on in their lives, what things were going on in my life, and from that we arrived at this movie that we made. Very much together, very much organically, very much intuitively.
I actually love that because this film feels very lyrical in some ways. It's constantly moving, but also takes its time. It's a fascinating piece. Um, I, I, there are so many threads I want to pull on, but let's start with Warsaw
Mm,
because you mentioned there you fell in love in Warsaw and fell in love with Warsaw.
mm,
We don't really see a lot of films that discuss Warsaw as the romance capital of the
mm.
world, if you will. Even shoving Paris, a couple of knocks at Paris in this film. What is it about the city that you find so beautiful and inspirational?
The first time I went to Poland was in 2000 or 2021 for this really great film festival called American Film Festival. It's not in Warsaw, it's in this other town called Wrocław. But on my way to Poland, and like the idea that I had in my head was that I was going to arrive in a place that was black and white, in a place that was going to be just gray. And and I got there and I was so pleasantly surprised by finding this really incredible, colorful, vibrant, beautiful country. And I realized that the reason I had that expectation is just because of all the war movies, all the historical footage and photographs about Poland, and and that made me very excited to make something that showed the Poland that I was getting to know, the Warsaw that I was falling in love with, which is this place that's very colorful, very green. Um, uh, and then simultaneously, the idea of like is a place romantic? I think that is so subjective. And the idea that Paris is romantic is branding. And that really like the if a place or is special or romantic to you, it's really personal. And that's what's beautiful about it. And 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 making things that come from a personal place is really important, especially now um, when we're existing more and more in like the 1%, 99%, the things with corporate mergers and content just actually being AI generated, that I I'm desperate for the human touch. And a big beautiful part of the human touch is subjectivity. And that Warsaw is romantic is my opinion, and I'm a human and I will fight for that. All these places in the movie, this park, this bench, this tree, this street, this building, these are the places that I was seeing in my life. These are the places that I wanted to share with these friends who I brought to Poland. These are the things I wanted to share with the audiences that might watch the movie one day.
I love that word personal because again, I think that that's a word that really suits this film. It's even though it's about erupting volcanoes in some way, this is a film that feels very intimate, as these characters are just sort of trying to figure things out together. And actually, like it's interesting. You talk about this film collaborating and sort of bringing that, weaving that into the fabric of the film. Certainly, you've got a wonderful cast, and I have to ask about Charlie because
Mm,
she's a global musical superstar. And what was it like working with? But it feels like this is a team effort. What was it like weaving this story together with them as a team together?
mm. I a thing I say a lot is that it's process over product. I also say the process is the product. When I'm bringing these collaborators together, I actually even tell them it's okay if we don't make a movie. It's really about the experience that we're having. And I think that creates an environment where we all feel safe and secure enough to be vulnerable, to share, to reveal. And and so within that space, we really do just find this movie together. If it was a different set of people, it would be a different movie. We're not going there trying to make a specific thing. We're just trying to make something together that feels honest and true and intuitively feels interesting. With the belief um, that well, it's not even the belief, but with the trust that the like the questions that we have bubbling up inside of us are going to make their way into the story, into these characters, and that maybe we'll find some meaningful answers about our own lives that then could also be valuable for other people, if they are ever to watch the thing that we made.
Well, that's interesting. So when you brought the team together and got there, was there a kernel or a seed of an idea, or was it generally like beginning together in this space?
We start with half of an outline. So there definitely is a kernel of an idea. We know um, that Bethany's there, that Rob's secretly going to want to propose. We know that Nell and Bethany have some sort of history. Um, we know that Nell has this flower shop. We know that Nell has this sister. A lot of the other things we don't know. And then we shoot the movie in order. And so we are discovering the characters, we are discovering the story in this as the audience is as well, which I think is a very different process than how movies typically are made. I think that it's a very human process, and I think by making something with a different process, you will result in something that feels different, and hopefully feels very alive and feels very present because that's how we had to exist in order to make it.
That's incredible. And for you all to come up with something woven together so beautifully, I think that that's really something. I really think that's fascinating. I'd love to talk to you about the tension between reality and magic,
Mm.
because that is something that comes up time and again in this film. Is this search for something, some whether it's in dreams or in stories, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that, and maybe do you think we're always looking for stories and dreams to explain our lives? Even the volcanoes, I think, fit into that.
Yeah, I think humans are these animals with these really big brains, and it makes existence really complicated for us, and we can't help but search for meaning. I want magic to be real so badly, and I also know that it's not, but I also experience things that feel like magic, and that fuzzy land of thought and experience is what life is. Ultimately, in the search for meaning, I have found that the meaning is really about human connection. It's really just about sharing time on Earth with other people, and and when we have things like a volcanic eruption, we have things happening on the other side of the world. We forget that there are humans involved, and that's what ultimately really matters. Um, I feel like you asked a more specific question, and I was going to come back around to it.
I said, do you think that we're always looking for stories and dreams to explain our lives?
Right. Yeah, yeah. And I think that's what's so cool about stories is like there are ways in which we make sense of our lives. There are ways that they are supposed to be ways in which we pass down like valuable information, wisdom to the next generations. Don't go into the forest, children, because you will die because like actually there are bears and wolves out there and we we need you to stay here. And they help us answer these really impossible questions about like just like what are we doing and why are we doing it? And we can't help but look for answers because we have these big brains, and the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that we tell each other is how we don't all go crazy.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And even the conversation, the way that volcanoes are used here, and I don't want to say too much, I don't want to give it away, but there's this sort of whimsy attached to the volcanoes, and it's also undercut at the same time.
Hmm.
Is it magical? Well, no, not really, but somehow it is. And there's this walking back and forth between the lines of these things in this film. I think it's such a fascinating dance.
As I move through life, I experience things that seem like magic. I experience coincidences, and I love that feeling. It feels so great, and it bums me out when somebody points out that when you're like, oh my gosh, I saw this friend at this coffee shop again or whatever, and it's like that's because they live like half a mile from there, and that's the only, that, like there's like logistics, there's like percentages that can explain how it's actually not that magical. Um, and and I feel like it's as with so much of life, it's about finding some sort of balance where you don't want there to be like I don't need there to be a logical explanation for everything. I want there to be space for some wiggle room, some magic. If I give too much significance to the magic and I let that dictate all of my choices, then that's also going to lead to trouble as well. But I do want there to be both. And so with in so many ways, I feel and experience that the healthiest way to move through life is seeking some sort of balance between these two sides.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I'm all in on story. I think that
Mm,
our relationship to story is a massive, massive question in our lives and how
mm,
we understand the world. And
mhm.
like honestly, this is such a fascinating piece. It's a wonderful film. I know you've offered this gift, this story to the audience now. What do you hope they take away from Erupcia?
Um, I hope that I hope that they have a nice time, first of all. I hope that they feel like their time has been respected and honored. I would love if they would travel to Poland. I would love if they would go visit Warsaw. It's a really amazing city and place and people. I also would love if they would reflect on their own actions and behaviors, how and their own potential level of narcissism. We have our phones and we're not going to get rid of them. They serve so many purposes, but they also trick us into thinking that we are the center of the universe. The algorithms make us think that it's all about us because it's marketing to us. And and the thing that we also need to do is remember that it's not all about us
Yeah.
and that our actions can negatively impact other people and to look up from our phones just to remember that the real point that we're here, the real thing we're working towards is just connecting with each other.
Yeah, I love that. Volcanoes kill people, as we've been told.
They
Um,
do.
but
And they also create new land, you know?
it's
That's
true.
like their new life is birthed from death. So again, it's some sort of balance.
Well, how many times? I mean, this is different, I understand, but how often do people complain about the rain? But we need the rain.
Exactly. Hmm.
Yep, absolutely. Pete, honestly, the film is wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. I really do hope people take a chance, take the chance to visit Warsaw in Erupcia.
Yeah.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Have a
Steve.
great day.
You too.
Thanks. Bye bye.